The palace gates are silent, no carriages, no waving crowds, just cold stone and the weight of history. Then, they appear, Charles and William, shoulder to shoulder, united but hollow-eyed. The king speaks first. This is very hard. For us, it's not just a royal statement. It's a father, a son, two men clinging to dignity in the eye of a storm. For months, whispers echoed through corridors and headlines. Now, the truth has stepped out from behind the curtain, and the world holds its breath, not for a title, not for protocol, but for the family behind the facade. This isn't just royal news, it's personal, and it changes everything. Because when the crown shakes, it's not the jewels we watch, it's the faces. Outside, the crowd roared. Trooping, the color had returned, a pageant of pride, precision, and pomp. Jets painted the sky, children waved flags, and for a moment, Britain felt like itself again. But inside the palace walls, the mood was very different, because even as the royal family smiled from the Buckingham balcony, they knew what was coming next. As the last notes of the anthem echoed through the air, a quieter ritual began, the one they never speak about, the one the cameras never see. They call it the Grand Conference, a closed-door meeting reserved for moments that truly matter. No aides, no press, no scripts, just the family, the firm, and the truth. This time, King Charles didn't sit at the head of the table as monarch. He sat as a father, as a grandfather, as a man watching the institution he inherited fracture from within, and beside him not just his heir, but his hope, Prince William, holding together the future with the same hands that once clutched Diana's. But it was Catherine who shifted the tone, not as a duchess, not as a princess, but as a mother, as the quiet center of a storm she never asked for. This isn't the Catherine of photo ops and garden parties. This is the woman who spent a decade building trust behind the scenes, pioneering early childhood research, championing mental health when others stayed silent, using diplomacy not to demand attention, but to earn respect, while others gave interviews. She gave consistency. While others launched attacks, she launched initiatives. While others left the table, she held the family together. And now, in the most delicate moment the monarchy has faced in years, she's no longer just supporting the crown, she's protecting her children, and reshaping the role of a royal woman, not with noise, but with quiet power. This isn't political. This isn't about PR. This is deeply, painfully human, because behind every title is someone just trying to do what's right for their family, for their future, and for a country that still believes in something bigger. She never raced into the spotlight. Catherine Middleton walked slowly, carefully into royal life. No tell-all interviews, no dramatic declarations, just quiet dignity and a willingness to learn. At first, she was known for what she wore. Now, she's known for what she builds and what she protects, because while others debated relevance, Catherine carved out her own. Not through controversy but through consistency. She listened, she studied, she chose to focus on what many overlook, the beginning of life itself, early childhood development, maternal mental health, the unseen struggles of addiction. She championed the causes no one else wanted to touch because they weren't glamorous. They were hard, they were human. And then came the silence, the kind that makes a nation stop breathing. Catherine disappeared from public view. Speculation ran wild, until one day she looked into the camera and told the world what no royal ever wants to say. I have cancer. It wasn't rehearsed. It wasn't grand. It was brave. And it broke something open, not just in Britain, but across the globe. Because suddenly, the Princess of Wales wasn't a symbol. She was a patient, a mother, a woman, facing the unthinkable in front of the world. And when she finally shared news of her remission, it didn't just bring relief. It brought something rare in royal life, hope. Not just that she would recover, but that she would return stronger, with purpose sharper than ever. But she wasn't alone in this journey, because just across the corridor, another royal was fighting the same battle. King Charles, diagnosed, treated, enduring. Two very different roles. One shared reality. Cancer doesn't care about crowns. It humbles even the highest among us. And in that shared pain, something changed. Between a king and a future queen, between a father-in-law and a daughter, they were no longer just members of the same institution. They became mirrors for each other's suffering and each other's strength. This isn't the version of royalty you read about in fairy tales. This is the real one, raw, flawed, mortal, and yet somehow, even more powerful because of it. At first, it was subtle, a missed event, a postponed engagement. Catherine, always so present, began to fade from view, and then when she did reappear, we saw it, the fragility, the weight beneath her smile, the way she stood just a little closer to William, the way the light behind her eyes had dimmed, just a little. The world cheered her return, but inside palace walls they knew the truth. Recovery isn't a ribbon-cutting ceremony. It's radiation, exhaustion, whispers in the hallway when the children go to sleep. It's waking up to be strong for them when your body has nothing left to give. Behind closed doors, Catherine was enduring something no royal title could shield her from. Hair falling out in clumps, nausea that stole her mornings, tears, not for herself, but for the birthdays and bedtime stories she worried she might miss. And while the public speculated, William held the pieces together, not just as a prince, but as a husband, a father, a man doing school drop-offs in the morning, then facing diplomats by afternoon. He kept his chin high because she needed him to. He kept their children smiling because she couldn't always hide the pain. But when the doors finally closed at night, he broke too, because loving someone through illness is its own kind of suffering. And William was suffering in silence. Through it all, King Charles watched his son and saw himself, not as the sovereign, not as the statesman, but as a father who once watched Diana's light dim far too soon. This time, he vowed, there would be no press circus, no invasive narratives, just space, support, and a dream of a simpler, kinder monarchy. He gave a rare tribute not in gold or ceremony but in words, quietly spoken, deeply felt. Catherine has shown the kind of strength that inspires us all. No grand declarations, no royal flourish, just truth. And then, William stood before the nation. He didn't cry, he didn't need to, because his words carried more weight than tears ever could. She never asked for the spotlight, she asked for love and a chance to give it back. That line shook the room, because it reframed everything. Catherine isn't just surviving, she's leading, not through power but through presence, not with speeches but with stillness, with the choice to return, not for obligation, but for purpose. Her bravery isn't just in the battle, it's in the way she lets herself be seen even when she's at her most vulnerable. In a world that often confuses image with strength, Catherine is showing us something different, that real leadership isn't about commanding attention, it's about showing up, quietly, repeatedly, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts, because that's what love looks like, that's what courage looks like, and maybe, just maybe, that's what the future of the monarchy will look like too. William doesn't often speak about home, not in public, but lately, the words have been slipping through. He talks about walking the children to school, clutching their tiny hands while Catherine rested just upstairs, of bedtime routines she used to lead, now whispered through cracked doors so she wouldn't be disturbed. He recalls the empty space beside him at engagements, how every smiling photo came after a private moment of staring at her empty seat, and the tears, the ones he never let the children see, the ones that came when he thought she might not make it to Christmas. Those moments changed him, not as a prince, as a man, a father, a husband. So when Catherine appeared at Trooping the Color, standing tall in pale white and navy blue, it wasn't just a return. It was a resurrection, not of tradition, but of hope, because she didn't come back for protocol. She came back for her children, for her family, and for the people who had prayed in churches, mosques, temples, in silence for her to heal. She didn't need to be there, but she chose to be, and in doing so, she reminded a watching world. She stood not for the palace, but for the people. The applause was thunderous, but it wasn't for royalty. It was for resilience, for grace, for the strength it takes to smile after months of quiet agony. And in that moment something shifted. The monarchy, so often seen as rigid, became something else entirely, softer, more human, not diminished by pain but deepened by it, because Catherine's power isn't in ceremony or speech, it's in presence, in the choice to return without being fully healed, because sometimes healing begins with showing up. She doesn't need to command the spotlight. The country feels her even in silence, especially in silence, and slowly, quietly, her example is changing the men around her. Charles, once criticized for distance, has begun to speak more openly, more warmly. His battle with cancer has brought unexpected closeness, and it's Catherine who helped him bridge that distance. William, too, is evolving. He's less performative, more grounded, more willing to share not just his role but his heart. And that shift, it doesn't come from palace advisors or constitutional experts. It comes from Catherine, not with orders but with compassion, not with strategy but with sincerity. She isn't redefining the monarchy through revolution. She's reshaping it through presence, through empathy, through love, the kind that leads by example. And in doing so, she's quietly becoming the most powerful woman in the palace, not because of the crown, but because of her character. The response was immediate and overwhelming, not just from Britain, but from across the world. Outside palace gates, the fences disappeared beneath a sea of flowers, children's drawings, letters in trembling handwriting. "Stay strong, you are our future. We love you, Catherine." These weren't just royalists. They were survivors, caregivers, mothers who saw themselves in her quiet endurance. And something remarkable happened. The same media that once dissected her every outfit began reporting something new: respect. For once, headlines didn't speculate. They listened. Catherine had earned something more valuable than applause. She had earned empathy. And with it came a deeper understanding of what the monarchy might become, because her role is changing. It must no more endless public walkabouts, no more performative perfection. What Catherine is stepping into now is something more strategic, more meaningful. She's becoming a pillar not always seen, but always felt. And within the palace, that truth is already reshaping priorities. Charles, still undergoing his own treatment, has made it clear Catherine's values are not just appreciated, they're essential to the crown's future. Her early years' foundation, her belief in mental health support, her insistence on putting people before pageantry, these aren't side projects. They are now central to the monarchy's mission. And William? He's not waiting to be king to honor what Catherine has built. He's already doing it. In his speeches, in the causes he now prioritizes, in the tone he brings to every public moment. This isn't about legacy in hindsight, it's legacy in real time. Because the truth is, this moment changed everything. Not just for Catherine, for the entire institution. The royal brand, once built on perfection, is now learning to embrace something else: resilience. The palace no longer shines because it's untouchable. It shines because it reflects something real: struggle, recovery, hope. And in that new light, questions are beginning to stir. Whispers of succession plans, discussions about transition, speculation on how Catherine will shape William's reign, not just beside him, but behind every major decision. Because her influence is no longer quiet, it's foundational. And as the monarchy looks to the future, it's becoming clear: if William is the bridge to a modern crown, Catherine is the anchor, the still point in a turning world, and the woman who reminded a kingdom that strength doesn't roar. It endures. The house is quiet again, not the kind of silence that aches, but the kind that lets you breathe. Outside, in the soft green of the palace gardens, 3 children laugh. Charlotte leads the charge, George follows with cautious curiosity, and little Louis, ever the mischief maker, runs in wide, joyful circles. And from the window above, Catherine watches, wrapped in a cardigan, a cup of tea cooling in her hands. Her smile is small, but real, not for the cameras, not for the world, just for them. This is where her strength lives now, not on the balcony, not in titles, but in moments like this. Safe, still, sacred. She may never take the throne, but she's already changed it. Not with declarations, but with quiet defiance. Not by commanding a room, but by showing up when she had every reason to disappear. That's the irony, isn't it? Her power was never in her position. It was in her presence. The monarchy has always been shaped by image, by ceremony, by distance. But Catherine is rewriting that script, not with noise, but with love. Love for her children. Love for the causes no one else wanted to touch. Love for a future that feels less about tradition and more about truth. And it makes you wonder, what defines a queen? The crown on her head? Or the love in her heart? Is it her bloodline or her bravery? Her duty or her devotion? Because in Catherine, we see not a ruler, but a reminder that grace doesn't always wear gold. Sometimes it wears fatigue. Sometimes it holds a child's hand. Sometimes it simply stays even when staying is the hardest thing to do. And maybe, just maybe, this is what the new monarchy looks like. Not polished, not perfect, but present, human, real. And if this is the new monarchy, is it one we can finally believe in?